Good afternoon, buenas tardes, and thank you for tuning in today. On behalf of Mitchell Kaplan and all of us at Books and Books in Miami and the fiercely independent Avid Bookshop in Athens, Georgia, I welcome you to a virtual afternoon to discuss the Georgia Senate runoff with Writers Against Trump. To moderate this program, we're delighted to have Carolyn Forché with us today. Carolyn Forché is a poet, memoirist, and activist. She is the author of 5 books of poetry, most recently In the Lateness of the World, published by Penguin Press, and What You Have Heard is True, a memoir of witness and resistance. Her international anthology, Against Forgetting, has been praised by Nelson Mandela as itself a blow against tyranny, against prejudice, against injustice. She's a university professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., from where she joins us today. Remember to post your questions anytime during the broadcast by using the Ask a Question function at the bottom of the screen. We'll be taking questions from the audience throughout the program, and you can also vote up those questions that you like the best. And now, without further ado, let's get this conversation started.
Welcome. I'm Carolyn Forché, and I'm a founding member of Writers Against Trump, an organization formed last August to oppose the fascist dictatorial regime of Donald Trump and to work toward his defeat in November. We began with 12 people on a Zoom and grew to 2,000 members nationally and internationally in a matter of weeks. After Trump's defeat, we have focused our efforts on the senatorial runoff elections in Georgia, scheduled for January 5th, when Democratic candidates Jon Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock challenge Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. If the Republicans win one of these seats, they retain control of the United States Senate. If, however, the Democrats win both seats, they will take control of the Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris able to cast the deciding vote in any tie. This runoff election is, therefore, not only Georgia's chance to be represented by senators dedicated to the common good, but also the chance for Georgia to defeat Mitch McConnell, whose desk has been called a graveyard for the hundreds of bills passed by the House of Representatives during the 116th Congress. We need the cooperation of both houses of our legislature if we are to address our national emergencies: the pandemic, economic hardship, racial injustice, and climate collapse. It is astonishing that we have as yet no second coronavirus relief bill. We now face a wave of evictions, bankruptcies, business failures, sickness, and death. Everything depends on this runoff. We thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon in the busy holiday season. You already know what is at stake. Today, we hope to learn how we can help the voters of Georgia achieve victory. Throughout this plenary session, we will also be accepting donations for the organization Fair Fight, which helped to turn Georgia blue in November. With me are 4 brilliant and committed writers: Anjali Enjeti, Jericho Brown, Laurel Snyder, and Thierry Jones. I will introduce them in order of their appearance, and each will address us, followed by a discussion amongst ourselves and audience questions. Please do put your questions in the Ask a Question button, and you'll see the Donate to Fair Fight button below the images on our screen. Anjali Ajedi is a former attorney, award-winning journalist, and Fulton County poll worker. In 2017, she worked to get out the vote in the AAPI community for Jon Ossoff's 2017 congressional campaign. In 2018, she was a member of the AAPI Leadership Council for Stacey Abrams and the Democratic Party Coordinated Campaign. Last year, she co-founded the Georgia chapter of They See Blue, an organization for South Asian Democrats, and most recently served on the Georgia Biden-Harris AAPI Leadership Council, which saw historic turnout among Georgia's AAPI voters in the presidential election. She has written about politics, social justice, and culture for numerous publications. Her debut nonfiction book, Southbound, Essays on Identity, Inheritance, and Social Change, will be released by UGA Press this April. And her debut novel, The Parted Earth, will be released by Hub City Press in May. Congratulations, Anjali. Jericho Brown is a poet and a professor at Emory University in Atlanta. His first book, Please, won the American Book Award, and his second book, The New Testament, was named one of the best poetry books of the year by Library Journal and received the Ennisfield Wolf Book Award. His third collection, The Tradition, published by Copper Canyon in 2019, won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and was a finalist for many awards, including the National Book Critics Circle Award. And congratulations to you too, Jericho. Laurel Snyder is an author of many books for young readers. Recent titles include Orphan Island, which was longlisted for the National Book Award, Charlie and Mouse, which won the Geisel Medal in 2018, and The Longest Night, which won the Sidney Taylor Award in 2014. Her essays, reviews, and poems can be found in the New York Times, the Horn Book, the Iowa Review, and elsewhere. And she is a former commentator for National Public Radio's All Things Considered. Thierry Jones is New York Times bestselling author of 4 novels, most recently An American Marriage, published in 2018 and selected by Oprah Winfrey as a book club selection. She has also appeared on Barack Obama's summer reading list, as well as his year-end roundup. The novel was awarded the Women's Prize for Fiction, which was formerly the Orange Prize, Aspen Words Prize, and an NAACP Image Award. It has been published in 24 countries. Welcome to all of you. We begin with Anjali Enjeti.
Hey, everybody. It is such an immense honor to be here. I really want to thank Carolyn and everyone who organized this event. Such a great opportunity to talk about what's happening in Georgia. As I am also an organizer, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I think you should concentrate your efforts. As you probably already know, or maybe you don't know, 200,000 ballots have already been cast in this election using absentee ballots. So this is very good news. People are utilizing that option to vote. And early voting starts on Monday. We've got a little over 3 weeks left to get this done. And this is the time leading up to any election where we really start to focus and sort of prioritize what needs to be done and what we should sort of step away from. It's all going to be about voter contact. So let me tell you a little bit about what a lot of us on the ground are doing. So first of all, we need to encourage voters to craft a voting plan. If you have friends or family members in Georgia, don't ask them if they're voting, ask them how they're voting. What this does is it gets them thinking about what tools and what necessary steps and what information they need to learn about before they cast their ballot. Are they voting absentee? Are they voting in person early on election day? Do they have transportation to the polls? Do they know what polls are open for early voting? As you've probably seen in Cobb County, 4 polling locations were recently shut down for early voting that were open in the presidential early voting. 2 were opened back up. These were in heavily Black and Latinx sections of the county. In Forsyth County, they decided to close 6 out of 11 early polling locations that were open for the presidential early voting. So voters need to make a plan, and we need to be there to help them find out the information they need in order to facilitate the voting. So I'm going to focus a little bit about what out-of-state people can do, because I think a lot of people who live in Georgia have a pretty good idea of what they need to do to help. But we still need a lot of help from people who live out of Georgia. So I'm going to talk about some specific action items for you. Postcard writing. So most postcard campaigns are winding down. This is because obviously USPS has been taking a long time to deliver mail, And most of these postcard campaigns were gearing up towards having people request their absentee ballots and, you know, make it before early voting started. So you'll find some opportunities to do postcard writing. I'm going to put 2 opportunities in the chat in case people still want to write postcards. All right, hopefully I'm doing this right.
Okay.
So those are 2 places that I found that you can write postcards, okay? Text banking. I'm gonna drop 1 text banking opportunity I found in the chat. I will also tell you the same thing about text banking. Text banking is winding down. Why is that? Well, because text banking is actually fairly expensive. It's a lot more expensive to implement than phone banking, but also, at this point in the game, we actually want all of our voter contact to be conversational, right? So a postcard, you get a postcard, you can read a postcard, but you can't ask any questions. Text banking, a lot of people don't even like click on the text that they receive if it's not from somebody they know. So there's not an opportunity for a conversation there. So what we're really emphasizing for people to do is phone banking. Now, I get it. Not everybody likes to phone bank. It's a little scary, but it's so valuable. You know, if you can sit down and make 30 calls to voters, some of these, they're not going to be home. They might be the wrong number. The line might be disconnected. But if you just get like 1 or 2 people on those 30 calls, that is so valuable because the information that you exchange in that conversation, they're going to share it with other people. There's a domino effect, right? So you talk to 1 person and they'll start getting really excited and they'll ask you, where is my early polling place? What are the hours? You know, what days are the best days and times for me to go? And then they're going to talk to their neighbor and they're going to end up exchanging that information. So phone banking is great. If you've never phone banked before, I'm going to drop in the chat phone bank trainings so you can watch the trainings without actually committing to doing the phone banking. So if you're nervous about it, participate in one of these trainings. It'll show you exactly what you need to do. Phone banking comes with a script. So you literally are just reading the script and asking the questions. They're all laid out for you. Usually the way a phone bank is set up on the app, the left hand of your screen has the voters' information, where their polling place is, where their election day polling place is, what the hours are. So anytime they have a question for you, you can just take a look at that list and answer it. So do a phone bank training, especially if you're nervous and you've never done it before and you just want to get a feel for what it looks like. These trainings will help you do that. All right. So I want to drop some links now. Let me talk briefly about partisan phone banks. So most of the phone banks happening right now are where we specifically tell the voters, here's who you need to vote for, right? So we actually have 3 people running on this ballot, right? It's not just the US Senate candidates. We have another crucial statewide race. My friend Daniel Blackman, who is so super qualified for this position. It's unbelievable. It's Public Service Commission District 4. Even though it says District 4, it's actually a statewide race. So that position is in charge of energy, utility bills, right? I tell people, this is the person that's going to determine how much your utility bills are. If you live in an area of Georgia where you don't have broadband internet, he will help you get that. And he will, you know, make energy cleaner energy than what we have now. We have right now basically this monopoly, Georgia Power, that doesn't really care about destroying the environment when it comes to getting Georgians utility services. So here are some phone banks for these candidates. And I've got a couple that are geared towards specific communities. If you speak Spanish, there's a Spanish and English bilingual phone bank for John Ossoff. So that's a great option. Democratic Party of Georgia. And I included my organization's phone. We are South Asians calling other South Asian Democrats. Please sign up. We really could use your help. And then I'm going to add in there a nonpartisan phone bank, which is one for Fair Fight. Now, nonpartisan phone banks still convey vital information. They're super important. I'm trying to figure out, this isn't, okay. My message is too long, sorry. It's in the chat. Anyway, I'll keep talking while I'm trying to do this. So nonpartisan phone banking. What do you talk about in a nonpartisan phone bank? You help them apply for their absentee ballot. You help them find their location. I like to tell people who are nervous about phone banking to, you know what, my messages are still too long. I'm gonna have to do this one at a time, sorry. I like people to tell people to do the nonpartisan phone banking if you're nervous, because you don't have to talk about candidates, right? You don't have to talk about the issues. You can just help them get to the polls. And it's probably a little less stressful for people who are worried about accidentally calling a Republican. You won't for the most part. For the most part, you will call a likely Democratic voter. But if you're worried about getting a Republican on the phone, it's not going to matter with a partisan phone bank, because these are just to give them general information about voting. Okay, all right. I'm going to try to hit enter on this again.
There we go.
Okay, so you got a couple there. Let me add a couple more now. So anyway, so that's phone banking. Please try to get familiar with it. We have millions of voters to call left in the next 3 weeks. What you will find with a lot of these phone banks is there'll be a phone banking event, right? Like they'll say, come make calls from 2 to 4, and they'll have a training session and they'll walk you through it on a Zoom call. And then that link usually stays open. This isn't every phone bank, but like our phone banks and other organizations' phone banks, the link will stay open. So like if you go to the phone banking event on a Saturday at 2, you know, chances are you'll be able to open that same link Sunday at 3 and still make calls when it's convenient to you. Some of these locations are open for the entire week. So, so yes, please get into the phone banking. Okay. All right. 1 second here. Let me just put a few more links in. All right. This is the phone bank for my organization, which is for South Asian Democrats. And this is the Fair Fight nonpartisan phone banking. Again, not advocating for a certain candidate. Okay. All right. Donations. I want to talk briefly about this. So what did we learn during this presidential election? Having the most amount of money for a US Senate race doesn't necessarily win you the election, right? What is it spent on? It's spent on a lot of commercials and print ads and digital ads, which are all fantastic, but don't necessarily emotionally connect with the voter. So sometimes it doesn't matter. So I don't tell the candidates I said this, but I don't think you need to send your money to the campaigns right now, because I think they're getting enough money to do what they need to do. However, I think donating to Daniel Blackman is a great idea. So I'm going to put his donation link in here. And I saw your comment, Mariana. I will try to figure out how to get this document. Maybe it can be emailed afterwards. So I would recommend donating to his campaign. I also have a Google spreadsheet that I made like a day or two after the presidential election that has Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, local organizations that do voter outreach. I tried to keep it in alphabetical order, but I think it's a little off right now. Anyway, so these are organizations that work year-round in their communities to build relationships with their community members and get people engaged civically. So when everybody goes home after January 5th, these orgs are still going to be around, and they're still going to be working to get out the vote and to register voters and to, help them with understanding elections on January the 6th, right? So, and these organizations, and Fair Fight's on the list too, but a lot of other really small community organizations that do great work as well, they can stretch $5 like you would not believe. So I think that's a really good investment with your money right now. And like I said, every dollar counts. So another thing that's great for out-of-state folks, aside from donations and phone banking right now, is social media support. If you can go onto that Google spreadsheet and follow all the social media accounts that they have and share them on social media, this helps us so much. One, it helps us get our information out. Two, it helps us find volunteers. Like, you know, when people retweet something and from an organization, they will find us and connect with us, and then we have them phone banking the next day. So so that's really, really important. And three, it just helps it helps connect us with voters, right? So follow these organizations on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever they are, and share their information, because it really helps us build relationships with voters here in Georgia. Okay, so, all right, so I'm just gonna give some final thoughts right now. So we know that elections or voting are really, really important. They're not gonna solve everything, right? It's not gonna end white supremacy. You know, so we need to but we need to see the big picture here, which is this. If you are able, in addition to the other volunteering work you do, please consider getting involved in electoral politics work. It doesn't have to be partisan work. You can do nonpartisan stuff. You can register voters. You can fight for voting rights. There's all kinds of things you can do that are not related to campaigns, that are not necessarily related to the Democratic Party, because what we have learned is that even though voting and elections doesn't make everything okay, if you don't have access to voting, you end up with authoritarian rule, right? And we're here now and we don't want to do this again. So please try to get involved in electoral politics. For years, I was very upset with the electronic voting machines that we have here in Georgia. I started writing articles about them. I would show up to like federal court hearings about these machines that we were trying to get tossed out. And I was so upset when our state decided to spend $100 million on another set of electronic voting machines instead of getting hand-marked paper ballots. And it's even a more complicated system. These ballot marking devices we have are even more complicated than the old election machines we have, electronic machines we have. So eventually I just decided, you know what? I'm going to learn how to work the machines. That's what I'm going to do. Instead of writing articles about them, instead of going to a Board of Elections meeting, I'm going to learn how to work them. So I became a Fulton County poll worker, and now I know how to operate the machines. Does that make them any better? Not really, but I feel better and more empowered knowing that I know exactly how these machines work, and I know how to help voters vote on them. But something else you can do that's even more simple than that is, we all have county and state board election meetings. I mean, if everyone on this call started going to 2 or 3 Board of Election meetings every year and started voicing their opinions about how voting happens and about where polling places are open and which polling places should be closed and which should stay open, we would make a huge impact. The issue is that elections, we've had this giant presidential election, but most of the decisions that happen about elections actually happen at the county level, right? They happen for these Board of Election officials. They happen with the county commissioners. And so we can think about voting and elections and voting access on a very microscopic level, but make a huge impact there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And I'll make sure I can maybe get these links out to you at another time, since I just overwhelmed you just now. But thank you so much. Thank you, Carolyn. I'll turn it back to you.
Jericho?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm not muted or anything. I'm the old fogey who's always muted on this. Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure, in particular, to be here with some of my favorite writers, my colleague at Emory, Tayari, my good friend, Laurel, my mentor forever, Carolyn, and the Anjali, who is full of knowledge. Thank God for Anjali. In particular, I grew up with hip hop, so I believe in doing shout outs. So let me say hello to Evelina. Let me say hello to Rachel. What's up? What's up, Fred? How you doing? Sandra, tell Ben I said hey. And I see two of my favorite poets out there, Cole Swinson and Peter Balakian. I'm doing that because what I'm interested in is community. And I think there is no greater community than the community of writers. And I think the community of writers makes magic happen. One thing that we know that our imagination makes things work. And we're going to have to use our imaginations to think about ways that we can impact this election. We know that if we say words like tree, if I say football player, if I say bear, suddenly you see those things as if they were there. And we know if we write things down that we make magical things happen. So all of those links that were up there, here's what I would like to see you do and to do with those links. And here's how I would like to see you govern yourself over these next few weeks. And I believe I'm talking to an audience that will know what I'm saying. Sometimes you're writing and sometimes you're not. Or even if you're really disciplined about it, if you write every day, you don't always feel like you're getting anything done, right? But if you're a person with a book, you will find that the closer you get to completing that book, that happens because you are literally working on that manuscript daily. You're thinking about it all the time. And every day you're going to do something to your manuscript. I remember for my first book, I didn't know my book was done until I changed an M dash to a colon. And I suddenly was like, oh my God, my book is done. This last book, The Tradition, that came out last year, was a book that got done because it would not let me go. And every day I had to touch it. I had to type something. I had to say something. I had to do something for that book. It was like a love affair. I miss writing that book every day. I'm saying that because I want you to begin to think about this election in the same way. What can you do every day? Is there one thing that you can do before you go to bed at night that you know you did? If it's sending out one of those links on social media, if it's calling someone you know who is somehow undecided, if it's having a conversation that you haven't had, think about it creatively the way you think about a scene in your book. Think about it creatively the way you think about revision. If you do one thing every day until election day, then we will indeed win this. If just the people on this call do one thing every day. So that's all I'm going to say. I had much more to say. Maybe we'll talk about some of that other stuff. So thank y'all so much for having me. I love
you. And Laurel?
Yeah, well, same. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, and it's just really nice to see everyone. But I had two things that I wanted to add to what Anjali said, just because they popped into my head as she was talking. And the first one is that the worst phone banking moment in the world melts away the second you hang up the phone. Like, the good ones count. The good ones stay with you and stick with you. But you are going to have, if you pick up the phone and phone bank, you are going to have some difficult moments. And frustrating moments where you just can't get anybody to pick up the phone. Like, it's not fun all the time, but none of that lasts. And the second you hang up the phone at the end of the shift, it disappears. And so I think it's really important to remember how finite that to do. And it is the thing that does the most good in the world right now with your time and energy. And it's scary. So just try to remember it's finite and it melts away the second it's done. And the second thing I was going to say is, and I think this goes back to some of what Jericho was talking about imagination, is I really think this is a moment for imagination. And I think that part of what we've learned in Georgia the last 4 years, and I feel like we've been in the news a lot this fall, but we've had a lot going on in Georgia for the last 4 years. And if you had told me 4 years ago, before the 2016 election, what we were in for in Georgia, I never would have believed it. I wouldn't have believed the voter suppression. But I also wouldn't have believed what Stacey Abrams was going to put together, right? I wouldn't have believed that we were going to go from the 2016 election into the 2017 special election for Ossoff, into the Stacey Abrams battle, into the post-Abrams battle. Like, into the 2020 election, right? We have been in Georgia, and maybe this is all I really want to communicate. We have been in a place that I could never have imagined in my life politically. And I'm somebody who was raised in a political family. I got dragged around to canvas and knock doors and stuff envelopes as a kid. Like I've worked on so many different campaigns in different states. I've never seen anything like what's happened in Georgia the last 4 years. And on the one hand, it's terrible because it shows all of those authoritarian sort of fascist instincts, all the voter suppression, all the media issues, like so many, how much money plays in ways that it never should. There's so much happening in Georgia that's upsetting, but it's also really highlighted what people can do. And so I want to reinforce everything that Anjali said about all of these amazing organizations that have been going on forever. This is a continuous cycle. And as she was saying, like these organizations that established and done this grassroots work for the last 4 years, not this fall, the last 4 years, they're going to be there on January 6th. And if we have to have another battle, which this is what we know in Georgia, you know what's going to happen on January 6th? We're going to have another battle. And I hope not, but that's what we have learned, is that it's never over. And so supporting these organizations that have really been created in sort of sweat and blood the last 4 years, and send in this moment when they're getting this attention, sending them the reinforcements and the support and the resources that they need to keep going. That feels like where our energy needs to be. And the other thing I wanted to add is to go back to the imagination piece. I think that we look at phone banking, or we look at text banking, or we look at postcards, and we see them all as kind of the same thing. And I wanted to ask, especially to a group of writers, that you bring your imagination to this. That for me, to phone bank is one thing. I've been focusing on phone banking with Jewish organizations because there's been a real onslaught of bad media against Reverend Warnock. And so I, as a Jewish voter and a Jewish Georgian, am in a position to talk to other Jewish people in the state about how they need to see this differently than maybe they're getting it from their local Jewish newspaper or their cousin or whoever, wherever they're getting their information from, the Leffler ads, wherever they're getting their information from is wrong. And it's my job as a member of the Jewish community, not just because like we're Jewish, but because they're likelier to listen to me. Right? If they pick up the phone and they hear me at the other end and we can speak that common language, they're likely to listen to me. I have a neighbor in my neighborhood who called me a few weeks ago and said that he had gotten his hands on a list of the people in the immediate streets around our houses who had not voted in November. And what he basically was saying was, we need to figure out who in the neighborhood knows these people so that the people who know them can ask them to go to the polls on January 5th. That's 100 votes he's got. The point, right? If it's 100 votes, that's enough. I have my son's principal. My son's in 9th grade at a public school in Atlanta. My son's principal has been doing like nonpartisan get out the vote stuff every single day, because we know there are 23,000 people who could not vote in the November election because they were still 17, but who were 18 by the registration date, or not even by the registration. They were able to register because they will be 18 by January 5th, right? So principals in schools and faculty in colleges getting out and really getting those young voters out, that 23,000 votes is a reality. Like, that's possible. And what we know in Georgia is that what Stacey Abrams and all of these different organizations have shown us is that one by one, we can carve out those votes. So what I would say to all of you is, you also have individual identities as writers, within media, as parts of religious communities or cultural communities, as parts of the queer community. Like, we all have different avenues. And what I would ask you to do is, rather than thinking about it as phone banking or text cards, stop and ask yourself, who am I likeliest to connect with? Who's likeliest to be willing to pick up the phone from me, to hear a call from me, to read that postcard from me, not just see us as a state full of random people, but remember that we're a state of feminists and vegetarians and people who like to do woodworking and, you know, professional swimmers. I don't know, like, that we are many, many communities, and you have skills and ways of communicating that will connect with somebody here, if you can figure out what that conduit is, if that makes sense. So thank you all for being here so much. We do absolutely need you. And we need your money. I'm not gonna lie, we need your money. So be creative in thinking about ways of raising money too. Use your imagination that way too, you know?
And today you can donate to Fair Fight. There's a button right below our windows into Crowdcast. And Tayari, please help us wrap up our remarks.
You're muted, Thierry.
You're muted, Thierry.
It was you. It wasn't me. It was you.
I was trying to mute myself so I wouldn't have all this background noise. But anyway, everybody, I'm so happy to be here. I think my bio leaves out two things about myself that I think are the most important to understanding who I am. One, I was born in Atlanta. I was born downtown Atlanta. And the other thing that isn't in my bio for some reason is that I'm a graduate of Spelman College. My shirt says, "Turn Georgia Spelman Blue." I am very invested in not only the politics of Georgia, but the world that is Georgia. I think most of the rest of the country sleeps on the South because the South has become like this shorthand for everything that's backwards about America. But we have to remember that the South and Georgia is in fact the cradle of the civil rights movement. This is where resistance happened, was in the South. Very often we think of, like when we think about when Stacey Abrams won for governor, everyone's like, the election was stolen from her because of all that terrible Southern voter suppression. But we also have to look at Stacey Abrams was the only Black woman in America to be a gubernatorial candidate for a major party. And I say that too was the South. Like Stacey Abrams is as much the South as her opponents. And the South is also the place for what Alice Walker, also from Georgia, calls, also with Spelman, like Stacey, what Alice Walker calls the unglamorous work of the revolutionary. There are so many people who work so hard to make change in the South, and you won't know their names, probably because of who they are demographically, but they're not in it for their names. They're not in it for the clicks, for the likes, for the shares. They're in it for changing the world. So I was delighted when Georgia went Spelman Blue in the last election. I wasn't shocked. I was pleased, but I wasn't shocked because I know what we can do. And at the same time, I wasn't terribly shocked by all the voter suppression because I know what has been done here, but I know what we have consistently overcome. And I believe that we will overcome it again and again. We are going to win this. I don't even like using the word if. If we win one, if we win two, we are going to win this. We're going to come out again. And what I want to ask all of you to do is to do everything you can. Give people rides to the polls. Give money to the people who are hooking up the food trucks that are going to feed people who are in line. When I voted in the Georgia, the special election this summer, I waited in line 4 hours. I was in line 4 hours, and there were all manner of citizens, like little children with little red wagons pulling, saying, "Do you want some water?" Mm-hmm. Someone made me a raincoat out of a garbage bag. He had like scissors, and he gave that to me. And the citizens were the winner. Every story about that election was about the long lines, but the citizens to me were the real story. We are determined to have our votes counted. I don't know if you've read Stacey Abrams' latest book, but one of the things she said was getting people to the polls is the most effective tool for Democrats, because the things that cause people not to vote, the things that have alienated people from the system, are the very things that will make them vote blue. So when you approach the people who haven't voted, you don't have to change their minds about what is right and wrong and who to vote for. You just got to give them a ride. We need to make this happen. And phone banking is amazing. And also, you all know, we're all in lockdown. I, for one, I'm lonely as hell. I talked to the person who phone banked me yesterday, even though I already turned in my absentee ballot. I was like, "What's up to? What's going on? How's it going?" So don't be afraid to phone bank. And also, don't be afraid to be hung up on. When I did text banking, I had some Republicans give me some very clever suggestions on how I might spend my time, but it's okay. I just clicked them off and kept it moving. This is not personal. This is about giving your time and giving your money is about investing in what we're going to have tomorrow. We like to talk about what it's going to have for our children's future, thinking that this future we're fighting for is somewhere in the distance. No, we're fighting for what are we going to live or die next year. So I hope I can count on you. I hope Fair Fight can count on you. And I hope Georgia can count on you, because everything right now is in our hands.
Thank you so much. So do we have any comments or questions for each other? And I really would like to urge the audience to ask questions in the Ask a Question space. so that we can address those with the rest of our time. But mine, I think, is for you, Anjali, which is there anything we can do about the closing of these polling stations between now and January or in the future?
Absolutely. So what typically happens, what happened in Cobb, for example, right? If enough people get outraged, and the media picks it up, right? Usually it's the local media first. If enough of the local media writes about it, then the national newspapers and magazines pick it up. When everybody starts talking about it on the national level, that's when things change. Then Cobb County was so embarrassed, they opened up 2 more polling places. I haven't seen a whole lot of reporting about what's happened in Forsyth County, but I can certainly tell you why I think it happened. And I would appreciate it if people tweeted about this. I mean, like I mentioned, they had 11 early polling locations before the presidential election. They're now having only 5. And I will tell you what happened is that the minority population in Forsyth County has exploded over the last few years. Forsyth County is legendary for being racist, for not having a single Black person living there until the late 80s, 90s, okay? So what's happened is Black people have been moving there. Latinx people have moved there. Asian Americans have moved there. Asian Americans had a voter turnout rate in Forsyth County of something like 75%, okay? People went out to vote in droves in Forsyth County. This is why they closed the polling places. This is why early voting is only open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. there, and there are no weekend early voting days leading up to the January 5th runoff. This is intentional suppression. During the hearing, the Republican Party, I mean, they were talking about the fact that they are restricting early voting because of alleged voter fraud. So if people start talking about this on social media, if people tweet storm this, eventually somebody is going to pick it up. And then if it goes viral, they're going to feel pressured into changing it, right? But that's why social media, it's so great that so many of us are on there, because we can create the news. I mean, we really can. We can talk about something being wrong and enough so that it gets reported, and then perhaps it gets reported on the national level. And then these counties are being pressured to scale things back. That's what happened in Randolph County leading to the 2018 midterms, right? They were slashing polling places, which would have made it, miles and miles for Black voters to go to vote on election day. So we can actually pressure these institutions to change their minds by being loud about it, by being writers, right? By speaking out, by saying what we mean, by talking about what is bothering us. And where we see injustice, we can actually change it ourselves.
So you're saying it's still possible to reopen those polling stations in Cobb County?
Well, in Cobb County, there's 2 of them. Now, I don't know that the Board of Elections is going to budge on those 2, but I mean, we in 2018, there were like viral tweets that led to the exact match policy changing in Georgia, where your name has to match perfectly on your photo ID with the voter registration. This all started with viral tweets. I mean, this is how it happens, is that, people talk about it on social media enough so that a journalist starts paying attention and then does an interview. And then when enough media picks it up, a lawsuit gets filed, right? That's the final stage, is somebody files a lawsuit. One of these civil rights organizations files a lawsuit. And so why not try, right? I mean, this election is really about throwing 1,000 darts at target and hoping one of them stick. We just need one of them to stick, right? And if they do, that's how change happens. So absolutely, I don't see why we can't try to do more to pressure Cobb County and pressure Forsyth County and fight against these ridiculous allegations of voter fraud, which is what has caused these polling places to close to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We had a question that appeared in the chat. I haven't seen any in the Ask a Question space yet. So, but in the chat, we're asked whether creative work has been done for the election. Poems, songs, films. Are people mobilized in that way? I think it's rather hard to write a poem about an election, but Jericho could do it. Couldn't you, Jericho?
I do think that we're always mobilized in that way. And I think in particular, the 5 people that you see talking to you now, one of the things that I was so upset about in the last presidential, not this past, but the the presidential election that I have yet to understand. One of the things that that bothered me was this sense of surprise. Everybody couldn't believe it. How did this happen? Oh, I can't believe it. I'm so surprised. And as a writer, I thought that was actually quite insulting for us to say, for my writer friends to say that they are surprised by fascism in this nation, that they are surprised when people are surprised by the fact that folks would rather not let us have a stimulus check. People are surprised that people want to govern what women do or do not do with their bodies. People are surprised about how COVID has been handled, that people are surprised that we're in a position of whether or not to trust vaccines. Those kinds of things don't seem to me surprises. As Tayari mentioned, if you read Adrienne Rich, if you read Allen Ginsberg, if you read Langston Hughes, if you believe them at their word, and you are a writer, you understand you're writing on a continuum. These things won't go away, but our writing does change them. And so what I'm hoping my work does is continue to change those things. Do I sit and think, oh, I want to change the government as I'm writing my poems? No, I try to write those poems of my soul. But because I'm writing the poems of my soul, I expect to tell the truth. And that includes the truth. And that's the truth of this nation. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do unless we make it. That's right. We've got to make it.
That's right. We have. Go ahead.
I was reach out from out of state for ways to like bring their performance group down to Atlanta right now, or they want to do something specifically creative around the election. And I don't want to sound negative, but my instinct has actually been to say that that's perhaps not the best use of the sort of, I would never say that people shouldn't create art, but that right now in this particular moment in time, I'm not sure that out of state sort of art coming to Georgia to sort of use this moment or participate in this moment is what we really need and want. But I've also seen artists and authors who are using their skills and gifts right now to do fundraisers and create money and like draw attention to Georgia in other ways. And so I feel like it's one of those things it's a really fine moment of not using this moment to kind of springboard, but trying to find ways to use art to direct attention and energy to this moment. There's a really fine line there. For those of us who worked in, and I don't think I said this already, but maybe I did. For those of us who worked in the Ossoff campaign in 2017, when we had all of this, at that point it was the most expensive House race in history, and I was like out knocking doors one day, and like Alyssa Milano's down that way, and there's like a group of people coming in from Alabama over here, and it just felt like people were sort of converging on Georgia, and it felt like it backfired. It felt like the people that we were actually trying to reach were not being touched by that level of energy and excitement. What they were seeing was outsiders coming in. And so I mean, this is not to say don't make the art you want to make or don't write the stories you want to write or the poems you want to write, but just to say that thinking about how the art of the outside world is interacting with Georgia right now is something to be very
Yes, it does. We have another question this time, the first one to appear in our question and answers. As writers with disabilities, we'd like to reach out to potential voters with disabilities. Do you know of any organizations in Georgia which would be a good first point of contact? Is there a way for writers with disabilities to connect with others?
I do not, but maybe that's something we should research. Anjali, are you?
Is this for writers to connect with? I would have to look into that. There's the Georgia Advocacy Office, but it depends on like writers who are disabled connecting with other writers who are disabled. I don't know about that, but I would happily do some research and get back to them.
I think the questioner is asking about how to reach voters in general with disabilities.
Oh, okay. I see. That's a great question. So I don't know of any outreach groups specifically focusing on disabled voters, but I can ask. I mean, I have lots of people I can ask, and I'd be happy to ask, and I can put it in the list of the document that I have with links to phone banks. And if that's able to go out, I will include it on the list after I find out.
It will be able to go out. I understand we can send that to everyone who's been on this call. Another participant has suggested that Swing Left is partnering with Forsyth County and that they're doing fantastic work, and they're very organized and effective and strong on relationships. So that's the organization Swing Left. We have a comment. Thank you. I was born in Atlanta 80 years ago and have waged a love-hate affair with Georgia since then. Judging from you, the state is in much better hands. Keep it up, please. Lamar Heron. Lovely. Thank you, Lamar.
I just want to say one thing too, that about art around the election. Our mural artists in Atlanta are fantastic. I feel like everywhere I go, I see just very specific art about reminding us of the election. Every time I go down Edgewood, I see Stacey Abrams' face on the corner of a building like that, and it says vote. And I mean, every time. So I think that the visual artists are really killing it right now with their T-shirts, with the memes they're making from the internet. And I also want to say that I'm born and raised here. The outside attention on Georgia has actually tickled me. I feel kind of important. I think that Georgia voters feel like the eyes of the nation are on us. And really, I don't know, this might make me seem old, but do y'all remember that Shake and Bake commercial? When the mother has cooked and it says, and say who made the dinner, and the little boy says, and I helped. That is entirely how I felt after the last election. Like, we turned Georgia blue, and as a Black woman voter, I felt like I specifically won me. I felt like, and I helped. I felt so empowered, and I think that is something that the outside attention is also doing. I mean, all over Atlanta, everyone I know that went to Spelman had on their Spelman shirts, hanging off our balconies, waving at everybody, because we felt like we did this. And the outside attention, I think, helped us feel like we saved the country.
Mm-hmm. And we'll do it again. Does anyone else have a question, or any one of you would like to address anything any of you said?
I would love to chime in with something. So I think, this has been a really interesting time, as Tayari said, especially for Georgia, the last few years, right? What I hope comes of this is that, we are celebrated no matter what happens on January the 5th, right? We are victorious regardless of how the election goes, but also that we are not forgotten, because as we know, our Secretary of State is intending to make voting here much more difficult next time around. I mean, he has proposed requiring photo identification with absentee ballots. Now, I vote absentee. I'm trying to even picture in my mind what that's like. Making a photocopy, putting it in which envelope? The inside envelope? No, because your vote is anonymous under Georgia law. So you can't have your ID with your ballot, right? So these proposals are going to really be tough. We're going to have more barriers elected. And so what I hope comes of all of this is that we not just think about Georgia in the future, but we become more of an interstate coalition where we invest in each other's state elections, right? Not just the presidential election, not just the Senate election, but we care whether or not our neighbor has a governor, a Democratic governor. And if they don't, and we are in a blue state, we invest all of our resources and energy into that other state. And that we remain connected so that we don't have so much of a tier between what elections we are willing to, change our lives around to assist with, and then these other elections, because they're all important. And what's been proven to us over the years is that we can't have a single Republican occupy a single position, right? I don't care if it's, at the municipal level, state level, federal level, whatever it is, every Republican needs to be voted out. Every single one of them. And
now more than ever. Now more than ever.
Well, Jericho, I have a question. Jericho, what's your plan to vote? See, we're going to model this behavior. Jericho, what's your plan to vote?
I'm going to early vote. I'm going to go stand in line, and I'm going to go vote. That's how I voted last time. I don't trust them. I'm sorry, but I do believe that people can absentee vote. It's just not for me. You know, filling out forms, that form might not go anywhere when you're dealing with me. I just wanted to say two things. One, about what Anjali just said about Republicans. You know, these people are standing by in the midst of a coup. I mean, like, I don't know if everybody's understanding that we are living in the midst. I mean, there is a coup right there. Do y'all understand what I mean? Now, we're not over there right now, but it is really real life right there. And there are people standing by who are willing to allow this to happen, who hold political office in our nation. We cannot allow that. I would much rather live to the left of the Democratic Party and think of them as the conservative people in this nation, because at least I can convince them of doing the right thing. I'm not dealing with these other people who cannot be convinced just to do the right thing. There was another question that said something about Ubers. To build on my, and I know we only have 4 minutes, but I do want to get to everything. To build on my earlier question about an Uber, would it be more feasible to hire a bus to take folks to the polls? And this question comes from Loretta H. Campbell. It's in the chat. And whatever we do, sure, bus. But we also do want to remember that whatever we do, we want to be careful about COVID, and we want to do it in ways where things can still be socially distanced. So, you know, it's 69 degrees here, so, you know, you can have a bus where the windows are down. So, so that is a possibility. That is a possibility for us. But whatever we do, yes, I think all of those things are possible, but whatever we do, we want to do it safely at a time like that.
I wanted to tell you all that Writers Against Trump will be changing their name after the inauguration, but we intend to keep going, because one thing we've really realized in the course of our work is that this is going to be an ongoing effort. We're not going to stop. We're going to be an events-based organization raising money for different organizations around the country that need help. And I invite all of the writers in the audience to join us if you haven't. And also, I would like to remind you that we're raising money for Fair Fight today. We'd like to raise a whole pot full of money for Fair Fight. So please press that button and help us out. And the other thing that I'm very happy about is that we were hosted today by 2 wonderful bookstores, and the bookstores have started to partner with our organization, Writers Against Trump. So we will be, this is really about energizing writers toward civic engagement and toward political work and toward being responsible citizens and taking an active part. Because in many of our literary traditions in the United States, this has been discouraged or condemned in the past. And I'd like to reverse that. I know all of us would like to reverse that. So we're going to keep going. This is an organization for the future and for the next election and the one after that. Would any of you like to say a last thing?
I have one question.
Yeah.
How do you think that Trump thinks you spell coup?
C-O-O-P.
Oh,
Great. That's great. It is. Yeah, you're exactly right.
That's so funny.
So I guess we can invite, thank you all so much for spending Saturday with us. We can invite Christina back to close us off.
Thank you so much for being here today. I mean, this was such a great discussion, but I love the sense of community. And that's really what it takes. And, you know, we love writers so much. You are the reason that we exist. So thank you for your work. Thank you for getting out there. Thank you for sharing so much of yourself today with all of us watching from everywhere. And remember, as Jericho said, it's a daily practice. So let's make this a daily practice and shake and bake the heck out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
very good care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.